Hello everyone. Today we're going to be painting this super bright and colorful Northern Lights painting. This painting is for absolute beginners. You don't need any experience, but do keep in mind that this painting has a lot of details and you're going to be using a lot of colors, a lot of brushes, so you absolutely will learn a lot, but it's not super simple where you're just using like 2 brushes and 3 colors. It's a lot more detailed than that. In this painting, we're going to be learning how to make a very colorful sky and kind of blending those bright, vibrant colors together, how to do Northern Lights or Aurora Borealis, and we're going to be doing more detailed, larger stars and making them really sparkle and shine. We're going to use a really fun, easy technique to learn how to do mountains that look realistic from far away. We're going to be using very painterly brush strokes to do the hills and painting a nice reflection that matches your sky. And then of course, learning how to do different pine trees, all different sizes, shapes, and then kind of one larger tree. So this painting, you're definitely gonna learn a lot that you can apply to other paintings as well. So let's get started and go over our materials. We're going to be using a glass of water, an 11 by 14 canvas, and the brushes you'll find listed below, or you can pause the video. We're using Liquitex Basics, and you'll find the colors listed as well. I am using So Flat Golden for the fluorescent violet, just because I like a really opaque violet when I'm painting. I'm also using heavy-bodied fluorescent pink. So to start off, you're going to use your 1-inch flat, and you're going to grab some white and some cadmium yellow, and you're going to use the edge of your brush to do a horizon line just below halfway vertically. And then you're going to use the flat side of your brush, and you don't need to fully blend in the yellow and the white. They can be kind of unblended. And you're going to use short brush strokes, all horizontal, and you're going to kind of add a little hump to that area. So you're going to slowly move up towards the middle and then back down. Then you can clean your brush out in your water and grab some of your hot pink, and you're going to brush from top right to bottom left. So your brush strokes are all starting up and going down into the yellow, and it's going to slowly turn orange as you're doing it. So you don't want to keep brushing forever and ever. If you like your streak of color, then you're going to want to leave it. Then you'll clean out your brush and do the exact same thing with the fluorescent violet. Clean out your brush and do the exact same thing with primary blue. The primary blue will brush right over the violet, and then on the corners and on the top of the canvas is where you're going to add the phthalo blue. So that's going to give that kind of darkness of a night sky up there. So that's all going to be with your 1-inch flat brush. We're going to come in later and do the Northern Lights, so don't worry about that right now, but you can paint your edges while the front dries if you'd like to. So the next thing we're going to do is some stars. You're going to take your size 12 bristle round brush, some clean water, and mix water and white paint together. And then you're going to use your left hand to hold your brush and use your right finger. And you're going to grab the bristles and then just kind of let go and let them flick onto the canvas. And that's going to give you that nice fun star appearance. And you want to kind of keep it random. Maybe there's a cluster of them. Maybe there's an area where there aren't very many. Really try to mix it up. The next thing we're going to do is outline our mountains. So you're going to use one of your smaller shader brushes, and you're going to mix up a deep purple. So you're going to use some of your dark purple, some of your primary blue, a little bit of white, and then a little bit of red, and that's going to neutralize it. And you're going to outline where you want your mountains and hills to go. So yours don't need to look exactly like mine. You can literally add, this is not based on an actual, it is based on an actual photo, but I did not do the mountains the way they were at all. I used a lot of creative license here. So you can totally do your mountains however you want. You basically just need kind of a wobbly line across the top. So you use the edge of your brush to outline them, and then we're going to fill in only that center of the horizon there. Then we're going to clean our brush out, use a small shader again, so size 8, 16, and we're going to use the same colors we used up in the sky. So you'll start off using the horizontal brush stroke with the flat side of your brush and add yellow directly under where the sun would be setting, and then clean your brush out and take pink horizontal brush strokes alongside the yellow. Then do the same thing with the fluorescent violet, same thing with the primary blue, and then the same thing with the phthalo blue. So you're basically doing exactly what we did up in the sky. So when you're ready to blend them, you're going to clean your brush out, and then just with a barely damp brush, you're very lightly going to brush over your paint while it's still a little bit wet. And that's how you can get that yellow, pink, and purple to really blend together. And then when you're doing the blues, just make sure all of your brush strokes start on the outside of your lake and brush in towards the middle. So you're brushing towards the yellow. So over on the left, you're brushing to the right, and over on the right, you're brushing to the left. And then make sure you use that dark blue right around the edges to really give it that kind of dramatic look. The next thing we're going to do is the first layer on our Northern Lights. So I'm using my size 16 shader brush, cleaned it out in my water, and I mixed some water and white paint together to get a really watery, transparent white paint. And I use the flat side of my brush, do a very light brush stroke. You can wipe off your paint on your paper towel. Definitely you can always go back and grab more paint, but you can't really go back and grab less. So shoot for less and build it up slowly. And so I did a brush stroke that's kind of sweeping up towards my top right corner, and then I'm doing brush strokes, and they're all starting from the bottom of the line, and I'm brushing up into the sky, and I want it to look jagged. So some are tall, some are short. Really mix it up. You want it to look really soft and fuzzy. And then while you have that same brush, same color, you can use the edge of your brush to draw lines in your reflection of your lake. And I did them kind of all over the place, and you just really want them to be same thing, jagged, off center, so kind of all over the place and not all in a straight line and not all the exact same size, really mixing it up. The next thing we're going to do is add a little bit of yellow streaks with the horizontal brush stroke with the edge of our brush, same brush, and then you're going to do it with pink, and then you're going to do it with purple, and then you're going to do it with blue. So you're basically using the edge of your brush to draw little horizontal lines in all of the colors that you used in your water, and that's really just kind of blending it all together even more. And don't feel like you're avoiding the white lines that you added on before, and don't feel like you're aiming for them either. It's completely random. You're just trying to fill it in. The next thing we're going to do is clean out your brush. So again, you're going to need a shader brush, and we're going to add color to our Northern Lights. So I'm starting off with the hot pink, not too much paint, and I'm not trying to cover up all of the white, but I'm starting above the white. So my brush strokes are brushing up into the sky. They're going beyond where the white is, and then I'll start to brush downward into the white just so that it really looks blended together. And of course, wherever you put the hot pink on top of the white, it's going to make it even brighter because it's going to have that white behind it to support it. Then I'm going to go in, do the same thing with the fluorescent violet. And just like before, we're not aiming to cover up the hot pink, but we're not avoiding it either. Some areas you want a little more pink and some a little more purple. I'm going to clean my brush out, and then I'm going to start doing some yellow. The yellow, I'm going to start from the bottom and brush up into the white. So it's kind of like it's coming out of the yellow sky that we had on there before. And then I want to just very lightly get a little bit of pink in there too, so that it almost looks kind of ethereal. Then I'm mixing together some of my hot pink and fluorescent violet and just adding a little bit more of that up on the Northern Lights. And you can do any colors that you choose. While I have this brush, clean it out, and I'm just adding a little bit more white where my sun would go in my sunset. And then I'm taking some white and yellow, barely any paint on my brush, and I'm very lightly brushing down from the top of my mountain in the middle there. So we're creating that sunlight is kind of casting light onto that little mountain range. And then on the edges, I'm casting on a little bit of pink. So for that, you're using very light paint because you do want it to be transparent. You do want to be able to see through it. Next, we're using our size 8 shader brush and primary blue, and you're filling in the top half of your two mountains. Your brush strokes are going from top left to bottom right. and then you're going to switch to the darker blue, the phthalo blue, and you're going to brush up from the bottom. And you can even add a little purple down at the bottom of the mountain as well. If you don't have a palette knife, you can clean out this brush and use white paint to do the snow. Just get a glob of white paint on there and then very, very lightly kind of drag the side of your brush down your mountain. And I have another video called Color Sunday where you can see in more detail how to do that. If you do have a palette knife, we're going to use a diamond-shaped palette knife. You're going to get a glob of white paint on there and line it up with the edge of your mountain and just very lightly drag it down. And up close, it's just going to look like globs of paint, but from far away, it's going to look like snow on top of a mountain. Then I'm going to use the edge of my palette knife to dig in white lines going up towards the top peak of the mountain. And then I'm going to take a little blue and just add a little bit of that in there too to mix it up. And then I'm taking my palette knife and my dark blue and just adding a little bit to the top edge just to give it kind of a nice defined edge against the sunset. So the next thing we're going to do is add a little bit of white snow at the bottom of the mountain. So get your smallest shader brush that you have and white paint, and you're going to add it kind of in globs along the bottom of your mountains. And then I want you to very lightly drag some paint up towards the peak of the mountain. So notice all the brush strokes on the mountain are following kind of the triangular shape. So I'm just brushing up from there. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of snow on that little baby mountain peak that's to the left of my sunset there. Now I'm going to fill in the hills. So I'm basically using, you can use any of your shaders. You can use your size 16 shader, and following the shape of the hill, we're doing a primary blue on the top, and then we're doing phthalo blue underneath that, and then we're doing the dark purple underneath that. So you've got those three colors layered on top of each other. And then we're going to take some white mixed with some fluorescent violet, some hot pink, a little bit of dark purple, and don't blend it all together. You want kind of all of those colors in a pile, and then you're going to line your brush up on the top of your hill and very lightly drag down in short brush strokes. So we want this to look very painterly, right? This isn't a super realistic painting, and that's fine if you're feeling like painting very realistic and like a photo, but this is much more wild and funky. So we want lots of brush strokes, we want to be able to see them, and we want lots of colors. So you're going along the top edge of the hill, and then as you work your way down, you'll naturally run out of paint. And so it's just going to end up getting darker and darker as it goes towards the bottom where we use that phthalo blue and that dark purple. So the next thing we'll do is mix up a really dark maroon. So we're using the dark purple, phthalo blue, and our cadmium red, and mix those together to get a really dark maroon. And we're going to fill in this hill that we have over on the right. And same thing, I'm not blending my colors all the way so that some areas end up being a little bit more red and some are a little bit more purple. I'm going to try to make it more red on the top edge that's closest to the sunset. And now I'm taking some fluorescent violet, adding that along the edge, and just adding some brush strokes of that just right in the middle of the hill, just kind of mixing it up. Then I'm taking my messy mixture of white, fluorescent violet, hot pink, and dark violet, and we're doing the same thing, just adding some short brush strokes just to kind of lighten it up. And if you keep brushing over any of those hills, you brush over it and over it and over it, eventually it's just going to become one color. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now I'm taking my smallest shader brush, my smallest flat, and I'm taking white paint on the edge. And I just wanted to add a little bit more right there because I could see the outline of my hill underneath, and I wanted to cover it up. So I used that brush because it was dry and I hadn't used it. And now I'm taking a small shader brush, small flat brush, and I'm doing some larger stars. So you're taking white paint make sure there's not too much paint on your brush, and you're basically doing a vertical line and a horizontal line wherever you want a star to go. If you want to have just one of these, you can. If you want to do a bunch of them, you can do that as well. I also added a shooting star in there just by lining up the edge of my brush with the white paint on it and just kind of drawing a curved line shooting towards the top right. So after you get your horizontal and vertical lines, then you can take the corner of your brush and just dab a little pile of white paint in the center of those stars, and that's going to make them look extra bright. Now we're going to start on our pine trees. So you can use any of your shaders. I'm going to use my size 8 flat brush, and you could use straight black, but I'm going to mix in some of my red and phthalo blue just to make it a little bit more earthly and not just a plain black paint. I'm starting off on the top right of my canvas and go down a few inches and then go in about 1 centimeter, and you use the edge of your brush to do a vertical line, and then you use the edge of your brush to kind of use it as a stamp going down the side of going down each side of your tree. And if you want your branches to go straight down at an angle, you can. If you want them to go straight across, you can. Or if you want to slowly kind of curve them up on the sides, you can do that as well. Now for this tree, this one's going to be kind of old and it's not going to have very many branches. For your trees, you want to make sure the bottom of the trunk is the thickest, and then it gets thinner and thinner as it gets towards the top. Then I'm going to take my size 0 detail brush, and I'm making sure I get a lot of water in with my black paint, really mix it around, and I'm adding in branches. So my ones at the top are going to be very small, very short, and they're going to be curving. So they kind of go up and then back down. On each of those branches, it's like you're adding little letter Ys. The reason my branches are so thin is because I'm using a new size 0 detail brush. When you use a new detail brush that has not been used before, it just makes really thin lines. So that's the key to that if that's what you're shooting for. As I get towards the bottom of the tree, I'm going to have my branches, instead of bouncing up in an arch, they're just going to go straight down. And that's going to give us the perspective that we're looking for. You can also do branches just kind of in the middle, maybe that are a lot shorter than the other branches. The key to making it look natural is just to have it be as random as possible. Some long branches, some short, really mix it up, some more curvy and some less. So the next thing I'm doing is just wherever I added that white on my water, I'm just going in and adding some pink over it and some blue over it. So I'm just kind of showing how you can cover something up if you want to. You just want really dry paint, no water, paint over it in white first, and then add color on top of that. Next, I'm going to be going in and just adding in so many pine trees. So the reason we have all of these different flat shader brushes is because we're going to do all different sizes of pine trees, and it's just easier that way. Even if you had one shader brush, let's say you just had one size 16, you could use that in a detail brush to do all of your trees, but it just makes it easier if you have that variety of sizes. So I'm going to do the same thing. We just talked about making it natural by doing all different sizes. So down here on the bottom, do a lot of really small ones. And then I'm doing taller ones that are closer to the edges of the canvas, the right and left side. And that's really going to frame the picture. So if your brush gets too loaded with paint, it could start to look really thick and start to make really thick lines. You can always clean your brush out and just kind of get a fresh start. So you can also sketch them all in. So right now I'm just kind of doing vertical lines, deciding where all of those trees are going to go, and then I'm going to go in and kind of fill them all in at once. Let's say you do one of your pine trees and it ends up being way too thick at the top. All you have to do is just make it taller, and then you can make it thinner as you go up and just add, smaller branches at the top your second time round. So I'm going in and with the edge of my small shader brush, and I'm adding in a little bit of snow at the bottom of that main tree. So I'm doing a little bit of messy kind of white and blue paint. and doing brush strokes that are coming out kind of in the direction that you would imagine roots to go. So they're kind of starting at the bottom of the tree and brushing outwards away from it. So on the right, they're going to the right, and on the left, they're going to the left. And same kind of painterly short brush strokes. So don't be afraid to zoom in on any of these trees, pause it, look up close, but also don't forget that this is a made up painting, and so yours does not need to look exactly like mine. You can put your pine trees wherever you'd like to, just like you did with your mountains. So don't be afraid to take creative license. All you need to do is put smaller trees in the very back and put some larger trees in the front to really get the perspective. So up back by those little mountains in the back, you can do the little ones, and up towards the front, you can do the big ones. You can also use the edge of your shader brush to add some black or dark blue right along the edge of your lake and right along the bottom edge of your mountain, and that's really going to make your mountain range pop and make the snow at the edge of the lake pop as well. And that's the last step. I want to thank you guys so much for painting with me today. And I hope you all love your paintings. And if you have any questions or comments, don't be shy. You can leave them down below, and we'll see you next time.